Some of his smart works include Puranmiyal, that is semantics in Tamil, language awareness and language style of Bharatidasan, Arigiyal Nokil Moli, and many more. He is also a creative writer and a trainer of teachers of various levels, modern methods and techniques. Professor has been member of various committees related to UGC, UPSC, etc. He has been working towards development of language and linguistics in different countries such as Canada, Singapore, Malaysia, China, and many more. And also in collaboration with other state and central institutions. This is a very short introduction about our professor. We can keep on talking about him for a day. So I will cut short this because of the time. And I thank sir for accepting our invitation. Sir, I leave this platform for you. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. I'm thankful to Bharatiyar University and the Department of Linguistics of Bharatiyar University and the head of the Department of Linguistics, Professor Subramaniam, and his associates, Professor Sundarabalu, Professor Ramesh, Professor Vijayan, and Professor Sankar Ganesh, the young people organizing this wonderful seminar. This is the second series, I understand. And I thank all the participants of this web seminar from different parts of this country, and I could see from other countries also. I find pleasure in associating myself with the Bharatiyar University Department of Linguistics, and I feel proud that I am included in this web seminar series, and I'll be happy to introduce the topic, namely research methodology. I will organize it in a particular way. First, I will give some introductory remarks about research methodology in general, particularly with reference to language, and some points of doing research in literature later. So first, I would like to bring the concept of research methodology. In terms of certain points, I would like to give the information. The first point I would like to say is research means investigation. Research means search of something, investigation of certain subjects, investigation of certain problems, investigation of certain objects and procedures, investigation of the subject in general, so as to arrive at some kind of solution to certain problems we encounter through language or by language. So investigation involves several methods. Now, research is an investigation, and it requires several methods to carry out this. We are familiar with historical methods, we are familiar with the structural methods, etc. So first we understand that research means an investigation into something so that we can have some kind of relevant information in order to produce theories or in order to verify the theories. Okay. A second point I would like to say is research leads to power and domination. Carefully listen. Research leads to power and domination. Research leads to certain inventions and innovations. These inventions make people comfortable or uncomfortable. To take a simple example, formerly we used to grind the flour, grind rice or wheat, etc. manually. And because of the invention of grinders, we find the life is made comfortable. So all types of inventions are actually making people comfortable. Sometimes they will make people uncomfortable also. Invention creates a feeling of power and domination. Suppose a country invents something, it develops a kind of feeling that it is more powerful and it is more dominating. Feeling of power leads to the conquest and control of others. For example, we have a history of alien powers dominating the Indian population and Indian land. And due to this domination, you will find the language is also being imposed in a country. And obviously, the local languages will be pushed to the background without making any kind of development. And this power is also exercised through language and make other languages submissive. Now, you take the history of India, you will find that Sanskrit was a dominant language only for the scholars, only for communication of higher ideals, higher research, etc. Then Pali came into existence because of Ashokan Empire and propagation of Buddhism. Then came the powerful Muslim domination, and Urdu was considered to be the administrative, legal, and political language. Then came the English, the British Empire, and they have introduced English in various domains, and still it continues to be a dominant type of language. And now, after independence, there are some attempts to make Hindi as a dominant language. So, always you will find the power politics is involved, and this is because of the inventions, because of the innovations, because of the conquest, and ultimately it leads to research. So, human beings are endowed or genetically endowed with the behavior to dominate. Human beings try to dominate the animal kingdom, and in order to dominate and make the animals submissive, they have invented tools, they have done some kind of research, and they brought into different type of tools, and tool making is based on the research. Now we are in a situation of doing a lot of research now. Research has propagated the COVID-19 leading to human holocaust. Research has propagated COVID-19 leading to human holocaust, and we are facing a threat, a type of non-conventional warfare that is going on today. Research is also conducted now to invent medication to get away from the impact of COVID-19, and in order to eradicate the virus and to develop human immunity system. So we find the immunity system on the basis of local type of phenomena and alien phenomena. We are trying to develop immunity system of human beings through local means and through other means. Local means, we are talking about usage of certain tools and other type of things. Alien, we are still doubtful about the alien use of the immunity system, because there is a fear inside everyone throughout the country. So research is going on to find out some kind of medication for this corona-19 virus 19. So research could be constructive or it may be destructive. Constructive because COVID is being propagated and it has been spread out, and it is constructive because we are trying to find some kind of medication for that. So we say that research leads to the power of domination. Second point. Third, I would like to say that we are now moving to language research. Now, with particular reference to Tamil, has a long research tradition. And this can be supported by the grammars that were written 2000 years back and the different types of literary pieces, literature, different kind of poetry, verses introduced in the Tamil language. And there is a very strong commentators tradition. So first we say that Tolkappiyar has given a grammar taking into account the letters and sounds, the words, and also the semantics, not on his own or subjective way, but by doing a lot of research. And this is evident from his own quotations. He says sometimes, Enmalar Pulavar. This, the people will say, the scholars will say, or scholars used to say. So that means there was a tradition of writing grammars to the language. And he has followed the tradition. He has done sufficient research in order to identify different types of rules of grammar, the ways of classifying the words, etc., in order to find a perfect and systematic grammar. And there were literatures. You find in Tamil literature, Sangam literature, different types of themes were taken. For example, you have Artipadai, these things, Artipadai, etc. So you have different varieties and different genres available. And these genres and language manipulation was done not randomly. And there is a tradition of making poetry through the manipulation of language in order to raise the aesthetic standards of the language. So there is a tradition. And the commentator tradition is a wonderful one. For example, the commentators of the ancient classics, they were interested in identifying or making the meaning of the text clear. All the original texts were not in a, it is not in a state of being interpreted. So they try to interpret the message, interpret the text. In order to interpret and give a full meaning, the commentators made use of a lot of techniques. And still we have to make a survey of what kind of techniques the commentators have followed in order to make a literary piece a good one and to make some kind of evaluation of the literary pieces. So Tamil has a long literature, grammatical tradition. Along with that, we find that underlying all this, there is a research tradition. Now in language research methodology, two things are considered to be very important. First of all, we should know what are the topics that are to be taken for research. What will be the subject matter for research? A second thing, what kind of method we have to follow in order to identify the chosen topic, the research, and the investigation we are doing on the research topic. First one, we can say, so topic of linguistic investigation varies from time to time. First, we can say that the topic may be based on the grammar and the vocabulary of the language. For example, we conduct linguistic research, linguistic investigation to find out the peculiarities of the grammatical phenomena in languages. Every language has its own grammatical patterning. To find out what are the peculiar features of grammar or grammatical phenomena, for that we undertake research. For example, if you take Tamil situation, a peculiar type of grammatical phenomena, you will find that the verbs are classified under two major categories. They are finite verbs, which they call as the major type of verbs. A verb is classified or identified on the basis of the tense it carries. There are certain verbs which do not have tense, and they are called as appellative verbs. So it is a peculiar type of classification you find only in Tamil. verb is classified as a finite verb, a verb which carries tense, and a verb which does not carry tense, but it has general number markers, PNG markers. And again, the verb is divided as finite and non-finite. One non-finite we call as a relative participle. We say vinayecham, which is used for qualifying the verb. And there is another one, peyarecham, coming from verb, which is meant for qualifying the noun. So you'll find this type of classification with tense, without tense, and muttu means finite, and echam means non-finite. And within that echam, you will find the noun qualifying echam and the verb qualifying echam. This is a phenomenon you will find very peculiar in the Tamil situation. So, and other things we can say, Tamil is a non-configurational language, so that word order can be changed to a certain extent, at least in the syntactic level. You can also say that Tamil is a language with head final. Head final means all the PNG markers, case markers, everything will occur only in the final position. If we take the வீட்டுக்கு, for example, to the house, the ku marker, the case marker is actually found on the end, at the end. Whereas in English, for example, to the house, the to, the preposition, you find. Kekda? Hello?
Sir, கேக்குதுங்க sir, பேசலாம் sir, continue பண்ணுங்க.
Yes, sir, please go ahead, sir.
Sir, please go ahead, sir. கேக்குதுங்க sir.
Okay. So we are talking about the topic of investigation in language. We are talking about the grammar, and vocabulary may be considered as another area or the topic for research in language. Vocabulary, one of the reasons for conducting research on vocabulary is to find out how peculiar the vocabulary is in the language, which may be different from other languages. I take a small example. If you want to address a person, to call a person, what are the different types of techniques we use for calling the people? First, you may give their names. You can call by their names. You can call by their surnames. For example, Gupta, etc. So you can call on the basis of the place from where he has come. For example, Tamiluran, the person coming from Tamilur. Kotatan, a person coming from a place called Kotar. Okay. You can also have a name. You can call the person on the basis of kinship terms. For example, you can say brother, sister, Anne, Tangachi, Tambi, Mama, Machan. Likewise, you can call. You can call people on the basis of the profession. For example, engineer, doctor, palkarre, kadakarre, all these things you on the basis of profession. You can call the person on the basis of his physical characteristics. For example, you will call him as Mookan. You can call, if he's a stout fellow, then Gundappan, etc. Okay. You can call the person on the basis of defects. For example, you can say Kuruda, Shivada, Kuruda, Nundi. So likewise, you have different types of vocabulary items available for just calling the people. Or if you go to the professional vocabulary, for example, agrarian sector, etc., you will find different types of vocabulary items which are pertinent to a particular area, particular community. Fishing technologies are there, agrarian technologies are there. So research is being undertaken, how different type of vocabulary items based on different type of domains. These domains may not be found in other linguistic groups. Okay, this is one. So a topic of linguistic investigation may be drawn from the grammar and vocabulary. The research is being done in order to identify different types of grammatical and vocabulary phenomena in the language, and the peculiarities you report it, and sometimes you conduct research in order to create grammars, create dictionaries with a lot of vocabularies. Okay. A second thing is, it may be the research may be undertaken, language research may be undertaken in order to identify the linguistic varieties. Variation is considered to be an important factor of any language, whether you talk about English or French or German, whatever it may be. Variation is considered to be an important factor, and with particular reference to Indian situation, we will find language variation in terms of region. Even Tolgapir has pointed out that there are 12 regions in Tamil Nadu, and you have different vocabulary items representing this variation. And you can also have social variations. You can talk about gender, you can talk about sex, you can talk about caste, you can talk about community, you can talk about profession, you can talk about, so different varieties. For example, male and female speech is there, adult and child speech is there. In one of the Australian languages called Walbiri, you will find the male speech. You have Walbiri and Tilvari. Tilvari is a language, a variety of language spoken by males after their adulthood. So they will have a, the restriction is there. Small children in our languages also, we find small babies, for example, whenever a mother talks to the child, she will say pachi. Pachi means for milk, and bua means for food or rice, and ambuli mama for tingal, for moon. So you'll find some vocabulary items are there. There are certain languages where baby language is separate. So you'll find language variation on the basis of social factors, on the basis of psychological factors also. For example, the language used by schizophrenic patients, language used by people who have some kind of speech defects, aphasia, and stuttering, stammering. The way in which they speak the language will be different. So psychological also we can. And you can also talk about the psychological systems. Okay. So different varieties are there. You have scientific Tamil varieties, media language varieties. You have scientific or technological, for example, teacher-student communication. If we take the language varieties, you can talk about doctor-patient varieties, telephonic conversation varieties. So different types of varieties you find in the language. Each will have its vocabulary core as well as grammatical patterning. And another aspect of linguistic research is how language is related to other phenomena. For example, language is related to culture, language is related to society, language is related to mind. You take a small example for cultural variation. For example, Tamil tradition identifies the classification of phenomena as primary and secondary. And this you will find in different domains. For example, if you take grammar of Tamil, you will find the letters are classified as primary and secondary. Primary, you will say vowels and consonants, uir, mei, etc. are primary. And you have Aida Eluthu, Magara Kurukam, Aida Kurukam, Kuttiyalagaram, Kuttiyalagaram, etc. are considered to be the secondary type of this. Similarly, in writing also, we talk about the major character and secondary character. Tunai எழுத்துக்கள், முதல் எழுத்துக்கள், முதல் and tunai, you will find in letters. If you take the food habits, for example, suppose you have morning tiffin, you will have a major food and you will have an additional this thing, minor. For example, if you have idli, then you will have the sambar as the additional thing. If we take the main course of food, rice will be there, and you will have different types of curries being this thing. So you will find major and minor. You take the functions, ceremonial situation. For example, you take marriage. The main aspect of marriage is actually wedding, thirumanam, and a subsidiary or something which is attached to that. You will say marvudu. Marvudu is considered, again, you are going, the marriage will take place in a particular area, that is especially the bride's house. And immediately they will go to the bridegroom's house. That is a secondary. Immediately it be done. So looking at everything in terms of major and minor, or primary and secondary, is considered to be an important aspect of the culture of Tamils. Now we take the society. Language is reflected by the language reflects the society, and you will have various theories on that. You take, for example, the location in which people live. And our grammarians also talked about different type of lands where language is spoken and different type of activities are being undertaken. Take the name of the persons or name of the places. Different agrarian names are there, then the business names are there. Now, if you take the names of places on the basis of the water bodies, you will find, for example, a word like Kadalur, near sea, Atur, near river, Kulatur, near a tank, or you will have Yeriyur, you will have Kinatur. Kinatur is, you have a Kinati Kadavu, for example. So in that way, similarly, you have Malayur, Kundratur. So on the basis of natural habitat where people live, on the basis of that, the name will be given. There is a place near my, the original this thing, Ettamadai. So I used to interpret this thing in the early days. It is 8th Vadai. It is not like that, you know. It is actually a very deep tank was there, and in order to irrigate, you will have a canal that is very deep in that, and that area we call as Ettamadai. So likewise, you will have Pattamadai and other type of places named also. So that actually reflects the cultural, social, and psychological systems reflected in the language. So that will become one aspect of our linguistic investigation. And it may be the linguistic activities involved by the people. That will become the topic of research. For example, human beings are involved in various types of linguistic activities. For example, they learn the language. Okay, they translate the language. They try to acquire knowledge about the language. They use the language in terms of speaking, reading, writing, listening, and communicating. They also involve themselves in the creation. For example, creating literature, creating dictionaries, etc. So you have different type of activities in which people are involved. These activities actually bring the capacity of knowing the language, capacity of understanding the language, capacity to produce the language, comprehend the language, etc. So during this process, whatever type of activity in which people are involved, whatever they see, whatever they do with language, involves the imbibing of the language. That means they will have some kind of control over the language. For translating, you require for acquisition of language, for knowledge representation, and for making the computer use language as human beings use the language. So we have different types of computer programming available. So these are different types of activities undertaken by the human beings, taking language as the major aspect. So during this process of comprehending, listening, speaking, reading, creating, you find a lot of errors being committed. A lot of problems are being encountered by the human beings. For example, during the learning situation, for example, you find different type of errors occur. The errors may be classified, you can have phonological errors, grammatical errors, lexical errors, syntactic errors, discourse errors, etc. You classify that. Or you can classify errors on the basis of speech, errors in speech, errors in writing, spelling, errors in comprehension, errors in production, errors in communication. Different types of activities, different types of errors you find. So, linguistic research is based on not only how the process of using the language takes place, but also it will provide some, the research will be concentrating on the type of problems encountered during the process of using language, the process and the errors that are being encountered, and how these errors are caused. There's another kind of research. For example, we say that mother tongue may be an influencing factor for the cause of errors. For instance, for example, cluster is not found in Punjabi. Clusters is a novel phenomenon. When English clusters are introduced, the Hindi speakers or Punjabi speakers will introduce a vowel in order to have the pattern congruity of their own language, matching their own language. For example, they say station as Satish, school as a Sakul. Some people use this as school, station, etc. And so our language, you have to pronounce every sound. It is a syllabic type of writing and syllabic type of phonology. So we have to produce every sound. So people used to say English words like island, they say as Island. Sometimes IRON, they will pronounce as iron and the steel industries. So similarly, you have a word like mutton. They will pronounce this mutton. Instead of saying mutton, they will say mutton, butter. So this type of variations are the errors occur because of the native influence, or it may be lack of learning, or it may be due to the interference, or due to his own physiological and other type of mechanism. So we try to find out the reason for the research. So we come across various types of problem. For example, you take another problem. For example, the students, or the people who have some kind of speech defects, psychological problem. You have aphasia, the stuttering, stammering, and all these types of things will be producing a lot of errors. And we had a peculiar situation when we were doing research, not here. As schizophrenic children, we were collecting data, and the child, we were asking what is the word for jackfruit. Given the picture of the jackfruit, the child was asked. The child could not get the idea, get the word, because the word elicitation will be a problem because of the brain lobe functioning. The child could not utter the name, but it tries to convey that this is from Salem. In the train it goes, something like that. It has seen, based on its experiential memory, it says something about the activities related to the jackfruit. And the word is not coming because that is conceptual memory, or the non-experiential conceptual memory is not actually giving hand for the child to get the name of that fruit. So we find alternative strategies. So we have proficiency on one hand, you have deficiency, and you have a mediocre type of thing. You have various types of strategies. Even in speech also we'll find some strategies which are not actually giving meaning, or it contributes to the meaning, but just to enhance the communication without any kind of flaw, we have different type of hedges. We have different type of gap filling exercises. For example, people may say, you know, or is it not? So such type of items are being used as asal nilai chapter, you know, in communication we use. So errors can be classified, and error may be one of the predominant areas for linguistic research. Okay, so far we talked about the different types of data that is available on which linguistic research can be undertaken. Now we can say something about the methods. The methods used in linguistics. You have so many methods. People talk about so many methods. For example, we have historical method to find the history of the language. We have structural method to find how things are distributed, etc. Now, at a superficial level, at a higher level, we can classify the procedures under three major categories: rational procedures, empirical procedures, and experiential procedures. Rational procedures will be based on rationality, reason. For example, Chomsky and linguistics is mainly based on rationality. Rationality means reason. So first they will try to consider some idea which is coming to the mind, and then they try to conduct various kinds of research in order to establish or not to establish the propositions made. For example, a Chomskyan system of language acquisition takes into account first the account that there is a mechanism in the brain called the language acquisition device. It was the earlier version. And later version, it says that the language, you know, the mind or the brain of the child has a structure. It is endowed with a structure from the birth itself. And only thing is, the child has to fix where the item should occur. For example, Chomsky used to give the example. For example, languages may be classified on the basis of the position in which the main items occur. For example, you take a phrase. If it is a noun phrase, noun should occur. If it is a verb phrase, verb should occur. The main items may occur either in the beginning of the phrase or in the final position or in the middle position. So you have initial, medial, and final where it can occur. This is the faculty the child has, the knowledge that the child has, and the machinery it has. And by looking at the data, if it is a Tamil child, it will look at the data and then it will fix that Tamil, the head word or head item will occur only in the final position. Important items will occur in the final position. So it fixes the language. So you can have that rational type of this thing. That is based on the reason you propose something and try to verify whether it is there or not. A second thing is empirical. You conduct some kind of research and then establish. There also you will find research, but here on the basis of the data only you will make some kind of generalization, some kind of rational procedures or principles or methods, whatever it may be. So you have the empirical procedure. Most of the scientific procedures are based on empiricism, conducting some kind of research. And the Skinner's learning theory, Skinner's explanation of language acquisition, and his classification of manned sentences, etc., shows that they have observed how the child, from the biological perspective, utters the utterances, etc., and on that basis, they try to collect the data and say that by imitation only the child learns the language. So verbal behavior is through imitation. One theory. Verbal behavior is due to language backup, already exists. So you have the empirical. Experiential is a very important thing. This is the procedure in which Indians excel. Experiential. You can have an experiment, you can have this thing, but you have to experience. For example, yoga teachers always used to say, or those who are involved in this type of yogic type of systems, if Hatha yoga, Karma yoga, or Hatha, whatever it may be, you should experience it. And that is why everybody cannot verify what is happening because of this yogic system. You may have some kind of development, you may have different type of changes, etc. But people used to say that they are able to read the mind of others. For example, through Raja Yoga, and they say Hatha Yoga, they are able to walk on the water, levitation, all these things. These things cannot be verified easily unless you subject to yourself. You know, it is verification procedure is a very tough one, and so people will not directly entertain this. So the contribution made by the Indian situation is through experiential type of methodology. And when you come to other type of methodologies, we can talk about cognitive methodologies. Cognitive methodology means we are taking mind as an important factor for our description. For example, the mental phenomena, we are talking about the mental phenomena, how it happens, whether the mind has the language or not, whether the language has morphology, whether it has the concept of morpheme, concept of morphs are there or not. Psychology is very interested. And what type of evidence they find. For example, they find some evidence of speech errors, a different type of speech errors people make. I'll give you an example. For example, morphology. Sometimes when you speak, if you drop it, it will break. Instead of saying that, if you break, it will drop. You understand? Sometimes we transpose the phonemes and there is a flop in our speech. There is some kind of morphological nav plural. For example, this the tongue will not be doing this properly. For example, you have another example. Kadai paarthu vadai vaangu. Instead of that, you say vadai paarthu kadai vaangu. Fresh butter. Instead of that, you have brush cutter. Rend letter. Instead of that, you say lend letter. Easy enough. Easy enough. You say easily enough. So, such type of speech fluctuations show that there is the concept of mark existing in the mind of the speakers. Okay. So you have cognitive procedures, then you have computational procedures nowadays, technological procedures. For example, computers are being, as I already told, computers are being used to store information, to process information, retrieve information, one thing. Computers are allowed and trained to understand, produce phonological, semantic, and other type of information. So there is a kind of research that is being on, which is on computational procedures. Then information technology is another type of this thing. Statistical procedures are there. Now to quantify that kind of data that you have, the kind of information you have, on that basis, you will try to establish which is a predominant one. There was a study, different type of studies are there. For example, the way in which the English is spoken in Singapore is different from the English spoken in India or British English. So for that to show how they differ, certain lexical items were analyzed and statistical procedures were introduced in order to show that which items are predominantly used in Singapore, whereas which item is used in this. So statistical procedures were meant for quantification being used. Otherwise, also we can talk about procedures. For example, on the basis of structures, we can talk about identification procedures, how to identify morphemes. There are different type of procedures and methods for identifying the morphemes of a language, classifying the languages, classifying the morphemes, distribution of the morphemes, where they occur, where they do not occur, and also talk about the system, description, structure, of items, etc. So identification, classification, distribution, description, and establishing systems, establishing structures are used in linguistics. So the next point I would like to say is how the language research is being shifted. Since I came from the Annamalai University situation, I see a lot of changes according to all the Western influence you find because of Western influence, particularly development of structuralism, etc., or historicity. Different type of researches were undertaken. Just to mention one or two, for example, when historical linguistic methodology was predominant, people tried to do comparative description, comparative Dravidian descriptions. Then when structuralism came into existence, classical Tamil like the inscriptional Tamil and the language found in different type of classical literatures were analyzed on the basis of structure. So you have shift in this thing. Now we are coming to an example now, literature example. Literature study is actually concerned with how, with reference to linguistics, we can talk about literary studies, are mainly concentrating on how the language is manipulated, manipulated in order to enhance different types of feelings, emotions, etc. So literature is mainly meant for creative literature is actually one form of language use. Language can be used for various things. For example, language may be used for education, language may be used for mass media, language may be used for science and technology, language can be used for computational linguistics. So different domains are here. Literature is one, and that was considered the oldest type of language use. Literature was the oldest type of language use. Language is used with a specific purpose, not for describing, just for creating some kind of aesthetic sensibility, aesthetic aspect of language. So this Roman Jakobson says this is poetic function of language. You have poetic function of language. So what are the methods through which, or what are the methods through which you use the language items and language processes in order to bring out the aesthetic effect in the literature? Literature, for example, you will find literature is actually talking about some concepts, some kind of speech acts, and it is expressed in some kind of form, because we in Tamil we say that it has vadivam, karuthu or porul, vadivam, porul, and it has some kind of function. Now, those people who are interested in the analysis of literature, I'm taking this literary point, one aspect of the research. There are different types of linguistic research performed on literature. For example, we can look at how feminism is reflected in the language, how Marxism is reflected in the language, how culture and society are reflected in the language. So the linguistic hegemony, for example, how the domination, all the type of literatures we're talking about some kind of domination only, Now I'm taking for my literary analysis one Russian literary critic, Voloshinov. Sometimes he's also called as Bakhtin, but whatever may be, let us take these two people. He was talking about dialogic imagination. What do you mean by dialogic imaginations? Imagination means you are creating a novel or poetry, whatever it may be, it is an imagination. Dialogic means, he says, literature is nothing but a dialect, a dialogic process. Dialogic process means you have two people involved. A literature is created by an author, and it is meant for a reader. So there is an author who actually creates something for the reader. The reader may be present or he may be absent. The reader may be, the author may be writing it in one century and the reader may be belonging to another century. Yet, any type of literature is actually having these two immediate people. Who are they? Authors and readers. And inside the literature, a poetry or drama or novel, whatever it may be, a story, you will find some characters speaking to other characters. So characters speaking to other characters. So two people. One is speaker, the other is a listener. And they will be talking about certain concepts, certain ideas, certain intentions, etc. And when you look at the sentences or utterances produced by the characters, you will find some kind of movement is taking place, different type of events are taking place between the speaker and the hearer in the novel, in the story. So you will find two items, other reader, the character one speaking to character another, and you talk about a different type of events. The events will be always in a dichotomous position. Dichotomous means one will be, the events will be good ones associated with the hero. The other one will be associated with a villain, hero, villain. This dichotomy is there. So a novel has to be analyzed in terms of these dichotomies. A story can be analyzed only in terms of these dichotomies. Why this dichotomy concept comes? It is because of Saussure and structuralism. Structuralism says that every language has certain signs. And the signs are combined in two ways. One, in a sequential fashion. For example, I came there, you have a sequential fashion, I came there. And underlying this sequential, this thing, you have a choice system that we call as a paradigmatic type of relation, paradigm. You have several types of things kept in separation. In we call it as vityasa padutudal. Okay, so different type of signs are kept in opposition in the mind, whereas in the speech they will occur in a sequential form. So there is a syntagmatic relation, there is a paradigmatic relation. Through syntagmatic relation of signs, you will find structures. You will find structures created, and through paradigmatic relation, systems are being created. Oppositions are being maintained in the language. Now we take a small poetry and show how you can analyze and try to find out how this opposition is maintained. I have taken this poem from Kalitohai, at least the Nether Kali, I think. Nalandwanar poetry, the first poetry I have taken. We are talking about the poetry is written by Nalandwanar for the reader, dichotomy, and the poetry is actually narrated. The ideas or the utterances are made by a lady. Two, the listener is actually the time. Time means the poladu. Poladu means evening time. The lady is actually having, he is alone, is left alone. Her husband has gone out. That is because of pirivu. Pirivu means she is not in relation because her husband has gone away from her for some purpose, for war purpose or for learning or for tudu or for getting money, earning, etc. Okay, that lady is actually speaking to the evening. The lady is speaking to the evening. What she says, first one, she narrates a situation. For example, there was a king and subjects were there under his kingdom. Different people were there in the kingdom. The king was there. And when the king was there ruling the kingdom in a nice way, the people were happy. And After some time, the king left for Turavu. For example, he wanted to live the normal life, and he wanted to take the life of an ascetic. He left, and the people, they feel unhappy, they are sad. And another king comes, and when the king comes, the people become again happy. And in between the period, that is in between the period where the first king left and the second, the coming of the second, in between that period, the people were suffering. Okay. Likewise, the sun was coming in the morning, and it comes to the whole day it is there. The people were happy, and the sun leaves, sends, and there's a gap, and the people were unhappy. And the moon comes, and people were happy. So this is the narration she gives. So from this narration, we come to the point that she is not happy because her husband is away. When her husband was there, she was happy. When the husband is not there now, she is feeling unhappy. And the second thing she says is that making a contrast between the people who are living with their husbands and the ladies living with their husband, and she is not living with her husband. So she, in opposition to the ladies, what those ladies are doing, and what are the characteristics, features of the ladies. For example, the lady who is actually the speaker of the poetry, the lady is not in a position to enjoy the music. She hates music. Whereas the other ladies who are with their husbands, they have a beautiful, they listen to the music, they have beautiful musical voices. With that, they mix up with their husband, they are embracing, they are doing all sorts of things, and they are happy. So this lady is not happy, and that lady, those ladies who are with their husbands, they are happy. Okay. Then she says that she is actually hating all these people, the music, the type of people around, etc. And those ladies, they were always in enjoying situation. So the poem ends in this way. Why I am living? Why I am living when husband is not there? Husband is not there. And the people in the village, they are actually giving some kind of gossip. And other ladies are good. Why I am living? And why I am living? And she gives another type of information, that is, she hates the evening time because the evening time also gives a lot of problems to her. The evening time does not listen to her this thing, but it listens to the happiness condition of the people. So when you look at I have to make this thing into different type of ideational units, and you will find a lot of oppositions are being created. For example, ladies who are enjoying, ladies who are not enjoying, ladies with their husbands, ladies without their husbands, the king and the people. When the king is there, they are happy, people were happy. King not there, people were unhappy. When sun was there, people were happy. So all these things, if you plot together, you will come to a system of opposition that we call as the deep structural poetry. So a set of opposition is being used in order to create the deep structure of the poetry. But the surface structure, it runs narrating different type of situations. So when you look at the analysis, you will find ultimate analysis. What is the underlying analysis? Underlying thing. Now, for example, you find in anthropology studies, for example, the Levi-Strauss, when he was analyzing the Oedipal story, he comes to a conclusion, different types of permutation and combinations, and the different type of structures and the different type of events, and All these things he computed and comes to the conclusion that there is a dichotomy. You will find nature versus nurture. Whether human beings are born from nature or human beings are born because of the uh, mixing of the male and the female. So nature or culture. So that was the dichotomy. That is a famous type of analysis by Levi-Strauss. And now we are looking at this story and we will come to the conclusion that the whole poetry is pertaining to Uravu, relation, Pirivu, isolation, which is actually the poetry of Sangam. That is Aham poetry and Puram poetry. Aham always ilvalkai, Puram means outside the ilvalkai. So Aham and Puram concept is being exposed in this thing in terms of separation, union and separation. Because of union there is happiness, because of separation there is unhappiness, and due to unhappiness, hatred, and why we have to live, this type of feelings will emerge. So this poetry is actually reflecting the feeling of a particular heroine, and it actually, in the underlying structure of the poetry, you will find the Tamil standard type of opposition, namely Aham and Puram, the dichotomy is being reflected. I think most of these poetic this thing will make use of at least one such opposition, that is Aham opposition and Puram opposition. So a husband living with his wife, that is Aham. When he goes to an alien lady and another lady, Paratai, it is separation. So in that way, Aham poetry and Puram poetry will be reflected in a delicate way in the deep structure, underlying structure. So the poet actually, when he was creating this type of literary devices, he keeps the Indian ethos, that is Tamil ethos, that is Aham and Puram, and somehow it is getting reflected in the deep structure of any poetry. One type of dichotomy. There are other type of dichotomies which I'm not going to discuss here. So so far I have given some idea about the major idea about what are the topics for linguistic research. I have not looked at the stylistic aspects, etc. when we talk about literature. What are the topics which are interesting and entertaining for the linguist, and what are the methods through which you can adopt this thing, and how in the course of time the methods and the methodologies, the research proceedings will continue to change these things we have discussed. One final point I would like to present is most of our researchers, linguistic researchers, are actually based on the research techniques, research topics, and methodologies imported from the Western countries. We have structuralism, generative listening, statistical procedures, and all these things are this. Now, it is a high time. The globalization era is now getting diminished. Hegemony is getting diminished. Hegemony means domination of one country, domination of one nation, domination of one particular culture, society, domination of one language. It is getting diluted, diffused. And so we are in a position to stick on to our native ideologies, native things, whether it is grammar or lexicon. We have to bring out this. For example, research methodology, there is a fertile ground. If you look at the commentators, those who are literary critics, if you look at their writings, you will come up with a lot of techniques which are being used for evaluating the literature, for assessing the nature of the literature, etc. So such type of researches, if they are conducted, our native this thing will be pushed so that it will be for the public in the future, for the world. If the world is getting reduced nowadays because of this thing, and we are not in a position to know what will happen in the future. So at least we will have some kind of native ethos, pathos, and logos. Then we can try. We can have our own research methodologies, our own research topics, our own this thing, based on our experience, based on our experiment, based on our rationality. Thank you very much for your patient listening. And I think I have taken much time. Sorry for taking much time. If you are getting bored, I'm sorry for that. Thank you very
No,
much.
sir. It is our pleasure, sir. You have made a wonderful lecture. Thank you, sir. You made it in the right time, sir. Sankar,
Participants, any questions? Please unmute your video.
Sir, Dr.
Good
Ramesh
morning,
from.
sir. This is Saranya from Annamala University. I
Please go ahead.
must thankful to you, sir, for giving us a wonderful lecture. Really, I am happy, sir. I must thank the organizers for arranging such a wonderful lecture. Thank you very much, sir. Still, I feel the same thought. You are not a retired person, sir. Still, I feel I am in Annamala University. You usually you come here to give you a lecture. The same feel I have today. Thank you very much for giving the same emotion feel by such a wonderful lecture, sir. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you, Saranya, for.
Still, I feel you are not here. I am not here. I thought now I feel that I am in our seminar hall. You give the lecture. What I felt in once upon a time, the same feel I have now. Really, sir, really wonderful lecture. Thank you very much for your lecture, sir. For giving the same feel and emotion. Thank you, sir. I feel very happy, sir. I am very glad to attend your lecture. Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Thank you for your listening. Okay.
Sir, I'm Dr. Ramesh from Bharatiya University here again.
Yes.
It was wonderful, sir. Like real good experience when your sharing was really very useful and so on. So I've got a small clarification. It's just about your last point, what you mentioned regarding this Western research techniques are getting dominated all these days, and you have initiated to pave a different form of nativization of these things. I mean, in our native style or a traditional way, whatever it may be. So can you throw some light on how to go about in this aspect, sir?
Whatever we are now doing regarding our traditional approaches, we try to interpret the classical grammars, we try to interpret classical literature, we try to interpret the tradition of the commentators, etc.
Yes, sir.
New avenues means if we want to have some kind of avenues, the technology is actually taking the place now. Technology is taking the place. For example, nowadays we feel that day-to-day interaction, human interaction, face-to-face interaction is getting less and less every day.
Yes, sir.
And what we have to depend upon in order to propagate whatever idea we have to make use of the technology.
Yes, sir.
Now, technology as it is present today is mainly concerned with the storage of information. We try to store information. That is also not perfectly done.
Okay, sir.
For example, if you look at the corpus being created in other countries, even the student corpus, for example, what type of student type of interaction, what type of errors they make, all these things, what type of essays they write, and how everything is presented in the form of a corpus. But such type of corpus is not available for our language. So
Okay.
unless we have some kind of data, sufficient data for representing our type of research, we cannot go further. One thing. Second thing is, there is a necessity to now that globalization concept is getting reduced nowadays, for example.
Yes.
And
Yes.
there is a shift in the technology shift. For example, now America and European things were dominating all these days, but now you find that all our data, whatever we speak, whatever we write, whatever this thing is being observed by some other people. You know, I was told that because we have that cell phones, the cell phone control is in one country, and whatever we do, they are actually observing what we are doing. So from whatever research point of view or whatever it may be, they are observing and they try to implement something so that something will be projected as this thing, and thereby they try to dominate all other things. So now the situation we require is a modular type of this thing. For example, no hegemony, no domination, no control. Everyone will be on equal par with this thing, and for that we have to equip ourselves. And new area we don't know actually. So what type of linguistic research will emerge in the future? That is still a question. You youngsters will have to identify some areas like that. As there is no such thing. Old things, if you simply talk about repeatedly, that is not actually going to give anything. For example, even if you talk about yoga, one type of yoga was you have transcendental meditation as one type of yoga. Different, you have to find out some new, some kind of new technique or some kind of new things, which will be reflecting our native ethos, etc. So we are not in a position immediately to say. We have to wait and we have to find out the methods and procedures and the topics. Okay.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir.
So you may not be convinced, I know, but immediately we cannot.
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir.
Okay, if there is.
So there's another question in the chat box.
Okay.
It says. Wait.
Dr. Ramesh?
Yes.
Did you complete the question?
Yeah, mine is over, Dr. Subramaniam. I think I'm just looking at the chat box. There are a couple of questions there.
Please go ahead.
I'm not able to get it.
Okay, sir, shall I pose the question for you? The question is, are we going to have a new metropolitan population of Indians who will call English as their mother tongue? And the question is it good for the honor of our Indian mother tongue? And that's a question posted.
Adding to that, Dr. Subramaniam, sir, he has asked, is Hindi taking up the role of English in demotivating the actual local mother tongues of Indians? This is the question adding with that, sir.
Yeah. There is some kind of measures being taken to promote Hindi, so that we can have a pan-Indian type of language, which could be developed, which could be renewed, etc. But this may happen, this may be possible in other languages. For example, when you look at the renewal of Hebrew, Hebrew was not considered to be, it was a classical language and it was lying dormant. And recently, Israel has taken up this thing and they have collected scholars from America, MIT, and other. They want to revive the Hebrew language. And there were researchers, uh, Professor Lees, you might have heard the name of Professor Lees, who was a militant person of Hebrew, and he came to Israel on a visit, and he has given some suggestions. For example, you have to change the writing systems, use language in media, use language for defense purpose, etc. So there is a revival. So what type of revival they are actually, Hindi is being promoted so that we can have a pan-Indian language common for all the people. We can develop it in different domains, etc. But our local wisdom is such that every language has its own classical this thing, different varieties. And so the mindset is not just for accepting as such. Again, it is a hegemonic type of situation, as English has done during the British expansion, empire expansion. English has become. Similarly, French people also in their own colonial areas, you will find French is being, all other languages were pushed back to the situation. So from people from Mauritius, they come, they know French, and they want to revive their own language, at least for in their home as a home language. So they come here for Central Institute for learning something about, they see the films, they see all this. So it is a mind, it is an attitude. What type of attitude? Attitude cannot be easily changed, So those languages who have a literary and grammatical tradition from ancient tradition, they will not be in a position to immediately shift to other this thing. If there is an actual situation, for example, Pidgin and Creoles were developed in that way only. So there was an actual situation for communication purpose, and the things were not well developed. So English and other things, French and other Creoles are being mixed, and you have Pidgin and Creole languages developed. But such a type of situation did not arise in the Indian context, I think. And if such a situation arises, then again, how the attitude will change, we have to see. For this question also, we cannot give an immediate answer to that. All other states of India, they are, interested in Hindi. They have no antagonism against Hindi, whereas in Tamil only you will find some kind of opposition is being this thing. That is because of the historicity of this language. So how the attitude will change, it is not possible. It is, I think even, there were some projects allotted making Hindi and Tamil. Many universities did not come forward to take up that project because they say that that will dominate. Even the Hindi Prachar Sabha, they are conducting courses, and many people, only some population will be interested in such courses, not all. So some attitudinal difference is there. If there is a change in the attitude, and automatically we will be in a position to accept Hindi, and how we develop that we have to see. Okay? This cannot be, this is a crucial type of question,
Yeah, yes, sir. Yes, sir. It's a kind of very sensitive question. Yeah, it's based on attitude of the people. Dear participants, if you have any questions, please go ahead. Our professor is waiting. And today is Sunday. We should not take quite longer time. This is a half day for us. Yeah, there is a long posting. I just have a look at it.
Okay, we can wind up.
Okay, sir. Okay. Thank you, dear participants. We have to thank our professor for sharing a wonderful idea on how to pursue linguistic researches in the modern era, and how the linguistic components need to be taken up for the future course of researches in scientific manner and method, and how we need to safeguard our mother tongue away from the hitches of the so-called mainstream languages and mainstream culture. So our professor has enlightened us with a wonderful quote from the classical literature of Kalitogai, and by there we can see umpteen numbers of meaning which is hidden there, and we have to unearth the surface and deep structures, as well as the connotation and denotation of the structures provided to we people by the classicist in all Indian languages. So it is a very great note for us, especially for the young linguist, rather than just searching for the westernized and the mainstream, the so-called applied and other theoretical researches. We have variety, we have an abundant resources already hidden as a kind of treasure in our languages. So we have to look for finding those aspects, and we have to apply the linguistic elements one by one, starting from phonemic variation till the coherence of that particular language in all levels one by one. And we have to bring our treasure to the entire global people. So thank you, sir, for enlightening us to bring out our the wealthy language structure and wealthy language meaning. And your lecture is really wonderful, and it will enlighten us, and we could see similar kind of lectures in future course of our research perspectives also. And we have to thank our professor for his acceptance to deliver the lecture in this webinar. Even though it is a Sunday, professor was readily accepted, and he said, okay, I will make it up, you just go ahead. And I thank you, sir, for your wonderful presence here and made a wonderful lecture this morning. And on behalf of the organizing committee, Professor Ramesh and Professor Sangar Ganesh, and the coordinators, Dr. Sundarabalu and Dr. Vijayan. So it is my humble job to thank each and every participants and our professor for delivering the wonderful lecture. And thank you, sir. Thank you very much. And I hope we will follow your footsteps, and we will take up your ideas, what you made this morning. Thank you, sir. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. And